48 sekund. 52 sekund, 53 sekund. To se učili asi počítat od Microsoftu, teda. Odhady času. Ale máme to tam, jsme tam. Jdem prostě koukat na Ziggyho.
The mark is in the rear of the dining hall. Cast, you're up first. You'll need to crack the lock and get us inside.
Sakra, seká se to.
Once we're in, Talina will use the vents to bypass patrols.
Ano, takže jsou to nějaký zlodějové. Je tam hodně nových postav. Takže možná budeme nějakým způsobem levelovat jednotlivý specialisty. Tak vypadá. Vypadá to tak nějak, no.
There's enough in that bunker for all of us to live very comfortably. If we stick to the plan, we should have no trouble at all. If we stick to the plan.
Nevím, no zatím mi to moc nesedí na Path of Exile. Řekl bych, že to bude strašně muset být o levelování těch postaviček, jinak nevím. Byly tam zajímavý nový prostředí. Možná se tam ukazují nový skill, já to nepoznám. Steal urn.
Giant robots, holy shit.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. In this new league, you will
plan
and execute elaborate heists. Travel to the Rogue Harbor and hire a crew of thieves to perform tasks such as lockpicking, demolition, and transportation. Break into a secure facility and be careful not to trigger the alarm.
No a předpokládám, že to bude stejně takový, jako že když nakonec budete strašně všemocný, tak tam přijdete, všechny ty leak mechaniky budete ignorovat a všechno to rozmlátíte.
Make a mad dash back to the extraction point to lock in your haul. Use your cut of the profits to obtain a blueprint, uncover escape routes, and train your crew as you plan the
To je dobrý, bude to typicky také mega složitá věc. Takže to bude dobrý, to bude dobrý.
Choose your payoff from exclusive new items such as alternate quality gems, trinkets, body and weapon enchantments, replica unique items, experimented base types, and more.
What?
Plan your escape on September 18th.
Takže těch 900 gemů bude taky? Alternate quality gems?
Okay, there we go.
Replica uniques?
D-sub mode only chat now. Unleash the beasts mods. Okay. What do you reckon? What's your
no teďko chceme vidět Ziggyho videa.
You will get banned if you spammed ASCII though. Mods will have no mercy on you.
Já se schválně kouknu, Ziggy tam ještě furt nemá, tady už to je.
Glee and joy when I saw this like initial little planning thing at the start. Oh god.
To bude strašně složitý. Viděli jste takový ten plán? Strašně moc nových currency.
Approximately 10 years that people have been asking for that. So we've got a little bit of a look at some of that. I'm gonna ask Chris about that whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna take a look at my video now, which goes into a bit more detail on everything. Let me drop the fancy cap for a second while I get things organized.
Fancy cap.
Let's try not this one. Not this
one. Možná, že on
Ziggy here. Ziggy, quiet. I'm not ready for you yet. Okay. Alright, let's check out the.
Podle mě to teďko nastavuje, že to bude veřejný.
Who is this plebeian? Let's take a look at it right now. G'day, Ziggy D here. Crack your knuckles and whip out your black leather gloves because in Path of Exile September expansion, we're planning a heist.
The mark is in the rear of the dining hall.
Why should we grow our own loot when we can simply take someone else's instead? In Heist, we'll travel to the unassumingly named Rogue Harbor.
To hodně pěkný pro oblasti tohleto.
In the harbor, we'll be planning heists to procure valuable
artifacts,
reappropriate equipment for better uses, and liberate currency for Exile's more needy. Of course, selfish people.
Další mega složitá. Myslím, že ano. Tohle to vypadá, že to bude mega složitý.
We don't want them making a scene after all.
Zajímavá je ta palice. Riveted boots, Solaris circle. Taký Svitker. Jo, robot tam, fakt, že tam byl robot. No to je opakování toho, co jsme viděli, jenom asi s trošku víc komentářem.
The Rogue Harbor in Heist acts as a new base of operations where we'll be able to sell off artifacts we're doing from our heist, plan further heists, hire a crew and use intel to plan even more elaborate.
Jo, to je taky říkali, že bude nějaká nová city-like oblast, to je ten harbor.
Each with different expertise and skill set suited to different heists and strategies.
Jo, takže budeme rozhodovat, který z těch pomocníků si asi budeme brát sebou.
Field operatives have different skills such as lockpicking or demolition, and they can gain experience from working with us on successful heists. We'll even be able to provide them with better equipment to help them help us.
Tohleto typicky vypadá jako synthesis. Kontrakt bunker,
These contracts and markers can be found out in the world from monsters throughout leveling and the endgame. But they'll also be found or earned.
Tohle to vypadá, že budou nějaký alternativy k mapám.
Like endgame maps can be crafted with modifiers to make them higher risk but higher reward. In addition to regular map modifiers, there will also be heist-specific mods. Unlike maps, however, contract heists can be accessed before endgame, bringing a mapping style of gameplay to lower-level characters, something players have been asking for GGG to experiment with. To embark on a heist, you'll take a contract to the Wayfarer in the Rogue Harbor. You'll also need some markers to pay for expenses and any rogues whose skills you may need to break into the facility. Once you get to the heist location, your objective will be to reach the secure vault and obtain the artifact within.
Tornado
As
shot.
you move about, steal things, get
Tornado shot.
noticed or find, you'll raise the alert level. If the alert level reaches max, you'll only have a short time to grab the artifact or anything else you want before the alarm is triggered and the lockdown begins.
Půjde o to, jestli ten lockdown je možný prorazit mega sílou postavy nebo ne.
Your rogue companions will be able to help you fight a little bit, but their main job is to use their skills to help you break in and make your escape. Everything that you take in a heist is considered contraband, and until you successfully make it out, they aren't really yours. Get taken out or fail to escape and
jsou takový ty zámečkový ikonky na všech předmětech, co padají na zem.
This is the first time where you might be able to lose something that you've picked up. While you'll only ever be dropping the contraband from the heist, it could well add a new.
Předpokládám, že když bude lockdown, vy to jako nevidíte. Vypočítá to dole. Časovaný mechaniky, řekl bych, že to se hráčům nebude líbit. To je jako, to se třeba mně fakt nelíbí, protože přesně něco seberete a potom nestihnete nějaký čas. To je nejhorší pocit v téhle hře.
It might be harder to get out than it was to get in. Successfully make it out though, and all the contraband you've pocketed will be yours. You'll also be able to fence the artifact in the harbor to try and make a marker profit from the heist. Once in a while, you may be able to obtain a blueprint.
Tohle to bude to zajímavý. Tohle to bude právě.
Intel gathered from regular
tohle bude strašně složitý.
Parts of the blueprint to uncover wings, vaults and escape routes.
Má to úplně jiný takový user interface. Ale nějaký další roboti.
Could potentially uncover easier escape routes or more rewarding targets you can hit while there.
Neboli bude to strašně movement speedová liga a řekl bych, že strašně všemocný postavy budou schopný celkem ignorovat lík mechaniku.
Here there will be multiple rewards to choose from, but choose carefully, as once you take one, the rest will be locked down and you'll have no choice but to escape. Now, let's talk payment. The heist is all about the prizes you walk away with, right? The artifacts we're finding in heists are just a means to the end. Fence them for markers to fund bigger heists. But it's the real loot we're after here. And it turns out there is a crazy amount of new stuff to find in Heist. In the game's lore, there is only one copy of
všechny tyhle ty uniky padělaný tepsel, replika, stamění, fizz, attack speed. Takže asi ty repliky můžou být horší nebo lepší, předpokládám. Jo, takhle, tam to je dexterity, tam to je strength. Ty krávo.
Not only are replicas like this a bit of a twist on existing uniques, but they also potentially create new builds or ways of building characters around these items. Another example is this replica ambu's charge, which gives significantly better endurance charge generation, but causes you to lose life rather than to regenerate it. Greater power than the original, but also a new drawback. These two examples show two ways that these replica uniques will differ from the originals, but there will be plenty more to see in the weeks to come.
Bude o to, jestli ambu's charge bude mít replika ambu's charge vždycky stejný, nebo jestli bude třeba 15 různých variant. To bylo šílený. S implicitem? Vidíte ten implicit? Ten úplně nekonečno fire damage? Co to sakra je? What the hell? To je úplně nekonečný, jako, to bych tak chtěl tohle jako base. Alternate quality.
Around 900 gems with a twist, in fact. That's around 1 to 3 different variants per skill and support. Some of the new quality benefits will be niche changes for certain builds, and others might be quite a bit better than the normal quality damage. But wait, there is even more weird stuff coming our way. In Grand Heists, we'll also be able to find weapons and body armor with brand new enchantments. Being enchantments, these don't take up the implicit slot and can exist on the side of them. Many of these focus around scaling modifiers on the items themselves, making for some powerful new potential. The top end power level of some of these is quite high, so some do have drawbacks, such as
nekonečná variance předmětů.
modifiers on the item, but greatly
Mimochodem jsem si to video měl dát níž a ne tam
these
nahoru.
items and some others in Heist are using a new system being tested in the lead up to Path of Exile 2, where they are much more likely to drop with good affixes, sockets and links, as if they were crafted a bunch of times with the best result being kept. So in addition to potentially being a powerful item base, it means that it's much more likely that they'll be usable or even good when you find them. Of course, in addition to all of this,
tohleto Chris Wilson posledně říkal, že chce to nejdřív za půl roku dát do hry. Uplynul měsíc nebo uplynuly 2 měsíce a je to ve hře.
Another new unique will be Chains of Emancipation. A build
that
that curses you with temporal chains when you get hit, but generates rage when you get rid of the curse. But once again, wait, that's not all, for there will be some other new things to loot and steal in Heist as well. For the first time since release, a new equipment slot has been added to Path of Exile in Heist: Trinkets. This dedicated slot allows you to specialize in improving your Heist rewards in different ways, such as having additional divination card drops, converting regal orbs to exalted orbs when they drop, or making some items drop corrupted. Most of these modifiers are focused on changing loot in Heist themselves, though some may extend beyond somewhat, such as the increased marker drop from monsters that we see on one of these items here. As trinkets drop corrupted, they cannot be crafted, and finding a few good ones could prove an interesting way to focus on boosting different rewards. Obviously here with the theme of heisting loots, the loot had to be
tohle je podle mě nějaký ten mega late game. To je přesně to, co jsem říkal, že si tam vyberete, koho si vezmete sebou.
Means that the loot can be pushed to higher qualities than normal.
Grand Heist.
It's good to mention as well that almost everything in Heist is tradable, from contracts to markers to filled out blueprints. So there should be a lot of possibility to tailor.
To je to, jak Chris Wilson říkal, že v příští lize se bude moct celý league content tradovat.
Without running into situations where you're forced to interrupt what you're currently doing. GGG also wants to note that they've made extra effort here to ensure that Heist works well in party play, which has taken a bit of a backseat in some recent leagues. Aside from the league itself, Heist also brings new additions and improvements to several skill categories. The first is curses. With the addition of various means of casting curses, there ended up being no real reasons to manually handcast them. Without harming these other methods of cursing, GGG is interested in providing some valid reasons to cast a curse yourself. Firstly, now when you cast a curse directly, it will grow in intensity over time, providing some pretty tangible benefit to those curse cast speed, AoE and duration nodes on the tree. Various curses have been tweaked and improved overall, and there will also be several new gems that interact with curses, such as the impending Doom support. This new support gem causes cursed enemies to explode when the supported curse ends, whether by monster death or otherwise. In the footage, for example, the player is actually overriding the supported curse with another curse to remove it, thus triggering the explosion.
What?
Now, the category of steel skills, you know, lancing and shattering steel, were added all the way back into Trail, bringing with them Impale as a mechanic. Since then, while Impalers become very popular as a mechanic, the skills themselves see a bit less attention overall. In Heist, lancing and shattering steel are being reworked, and 2 new steel skills are being added to expand this steel archetype. Steel skills will still impale, but they now also benefit from a new shard mechanic. Call of Steel is a new skill that is granted by all steel skills for free as a bonus extra skill, and it allows you to conjure swords from the ground that burst into shards that follow you around. Shards work as bonus ammunition for steel skills, providing benefits depending on the skill itself. Shards can also impale into enemies, and Call of Steel will burst these shards from the enemies as well, causing damage in the process. One of the new steel skills is Splitting Steel, which consumes a shard to fire a main projectile that explodes on impact into smaller projectiles, which can then generate further explosions.
Mně nebylo vůbec jasný s těma krsama, že když ta krsa skončí, že ten monster explodne. To je nějaký divný. To si někde budu muset přečíst. To jsem buď nepochopil, nebo je to úplně nekonečně všemocný.
We'll also be seeing some spell reworks and new spells focused around the idea of providing powerful effects when used alongside other abilities. They're aimed at helping players that have to stand still to do damage by providing powerful offensive and defensive boosts in a specific location. Flame Wall, for example, creates a wall of fire that deals damage over time to enemies that try to move through it, providing you some defense against approaching enemies. However, it also sets any projectiles fired by you and allies on fire, causing them to deal extra fire damage and burn enemies. Projectile-based builds will be able to create a wall to both zone enemies and enhance projectiles they fire through, providing extra benefits.
Myslím, že zónování enemí se nebude hrát, protože tahle hra je moc rychlá na to teďko. Ale to, že to bude dávat ten ohnivý damage navíc, a protože to vypadá nádherně.
Void Sphere is a literal black hole. Once placed, it begins sucking in enemies, grouping them up and damaging them. Enemies that die near a void sphere will be completely absorbed, leaving nothing behind. While it doesn't affect unique bosses for obvious reasons, it should provide some very powerful benefits in grouping up monsters, controlling an area on the map, and preventing monsters from leaving dangerous corpses behind. Also, it looks super dope.
Předpokládám, že to bude znamenat, že to nebude nechávat loot, takže předpokládám, že tím pádem to bude nepoužitelný. To se ještě uvidí.
And there we have it for now. I hope you've enjoyed my first look at Heist. There's a ton of stuff for GGG to tease us with over the coming weeks.
Fakt hodně věcí, už se těším na rozhovor.
I'll be sure to update you with the best of the new league as I can. That's it for now. I'm Ziggy D, and thanks for watching.
Steel box of Tripsys escape facility, steel earn without něco.
You violated the law. Pay the court a fine or serve your sentence. Your stolen goods are now forfeit.
A stranu tady níž, ať se nemusí tak ohet.
I couldn't help myself. No chat. The black hole doesn't suck up your loot, don't worry.
Hele, slyšeli jste to, že prej loot zůstane po black hole?
I was like, do I put that stolen goods in the video? Am I gonna have the entire song in there? I'll do at least one. Stop.
Path of
Heist, folks. Path of Exile, black hole.
Vypneme zvuk.
Oh my god, it looks
Ziggy zatím necháme. Tady si to šoupnu.
Yeah, it sucks up the loot, the XP, and the monsters. Fair trade-off. You don't get any XP loot or anything like that, but it gets rid of corpses. All right, so I saw some kind of like common questions that I'll answer, and we'll take a little bit of a look at the reveal page here because there's actually a bunch of stuff I haven't seen yet. And we'll be having Chris on in about 10 minutes to have a.
Jo, pravda, ještě jsem se nekoukal na tu stránku samotnou.
And I also have some other things to tease that aren't anywhere else. Some uniques and things that to showcase very soon.
Takže co je
So the first thing was,
jsme věděli.
a lot of people were saying,
Rogue
stealthy
Házek,
stuff.
nová oblast.
So what they did was they incorporated formation mechanics, like a reduced monster aggro range, so they don't notice you from, like, they're like noticing you ranges.
To tam bylo celou dobu to zelený?
And,
Jako,
things like
já tam nebylo, co? Já jsem to měl jenom na té, do prčice, já jsem to měl jenom na té spodní scéně.
You won't really have to go stealth, but what it seems like is that if you decide to not be so stealthy, then you will potentially not be able to loot as much in the initial phase of the heist. So effectively, you break in, and then as you progress your way through and use your like companions to like get through various hurdles, like rock picking or blasting down a wall or building a bridge or something like that, to try and get to the vault as your main objective, so that you can liberate the artifact in the regular.
Nevím, jestli to nebude po pár dnech strašný oprus, tohleto řezání dveří, stavění mostku a tak dále. Bojím se, že to bude oprus. A stejně tak klikání na truhličky možná bude oprus kvůli lootu.
Opening those ahead of time will like increase alert level and stuff like that, and getting noticed and fighting will increase alert level.
Basic.
And if you're like maybe a bit more stealthy about it, you might be able to unlock more of those chests without setting off the alarm. When you do set off the alarm, it locks everything down. Like after a short time, it's like 5 or 20 seconds, or I think it's 20 seconds. When everything kind of gets locked down, and then you won't be able to like open any further chests or anything like that, and then you just have to get out with what you have. So if you be stealthy, you might be able to get some additional bonus chests. But if you decide you just want to go straight for the, the main prize, the vault.
Nikdo nebude hrát stealthy, si myslím. Všichni budou hrát zoom, ať to bude co nejrychleji. Řekl bych, že to bude podobný, jako jestli klikat na truhličky v mapě nebo ne.
Yeah, kind of pog that they're exploring the idea of mapping content outside of endgame.
Že to budou jiný mapy a že se tam pravděpodobně dostanete už někdy od aktu 1, jak už to tak bývá. To je zajímavý. To je zajímavý.
What about minions? Will they auto attack? I don't know actually. That could be something good to ask Chris. I don't know how minions like rush off and attack enemies. They might. Maybe they won't. We'll have to see about that.
Ty lasery, jako co tam dělají lasery, jako co to bylo za animaci?
Mention gem enchantments. There's gem enchantments that I know of at least. There's new quality bonuses, alternate quality it's called for these
vypadá to pěkně, co to je za spell, to nevím. Něco živý tornádo show, zase chaos, absorbovací koule, Blackball na Siruse. Říkali, že na Unique moc to nebude fungovat.
Has something to show you in that regard actually a little bit later, and others will be like just things that are more powerful, like or area of effect is free now. So
co, necháme ho povídat?
That is obviously an improvement.
Bude tím scrollovat nebo ne?
1 to 3 different.
Necháme ho povídat a koukne na tohleto. To jsou nějaký obrázky. Obrázek nějaký odmykání. Obrázek úniku. Obrázek rozbíjení dveří. Ale teď se koukne nějaký user interface. Můžeme jim upgradeovat věci. Upgradeovat jim skilly.
Job experience requires level 4 engineering, sulfur blowtorch. I'm gonna ask Chris about this whole thing and whether this means we can get Oh god, Chad, I'm scrolling. What do I got here? Blueprint Laboratory requires... so these are the grand heists. The blueprints are like the second phase. So you got your regular heist, and then
Reception, demolition,
which are contracts, and then blueprints, which are for the grand heists, which have like
wings discovered 1, secret rooms discovered
really
0.
Stuff that was showcased in the video, like unique forgeries and whatnot.
Jo, neboli potom to bude probíhat tak, že budeme tradovat tyhle ty jednotlivé části, tyhle ty wingy, dejme tomu, že já si budu chtít koupit wing z laboratory, anebo blueprint repository, tak tam zase budeme chtít blueprint z repository. A takhle si to nakonec poskládáme a předpokládám, že tam bude, dejme tomu nějaká místnost a to bude tomu skarabová místnost v repozitory. Tak si to představu. Že to bude trošičku jak skládání si vlastních savehouseů v Bitrailu. Typu. Nedal bys to prostě trochu jíst na hlas?
What your way through or mega speed run your way through. It could be pretty cool. What do you think of trinkets?
Jako jsem dal víc na hlas. Tak řekněte, jestli to není moc na hlas.
I hate Magic Find, like rarity and quantity in these games, in action RPGs typically. I think they're dated mechanics. But this is a much more interesting way of.
To znamená, že tyhle ty trinkety, ty budeme trošku víc specializovaný na nějaký předměty. Jinak řečeno prostě něco bude nejmocnější a to bude nejdražší, ten trinket. Prostě.
Imagine if that worked, if you just dropped the Regal Orb out of your inventory. Just click spamming Regal Orb and turn into an Exalt. That's totally how it works. Another thing that was pretty cool.
Ta grafika se mi hodně líbí, Myslím, že na tom zapracuje fakt pěkně. Jakože tyhle to prostředí.
Take when an item drops, it might simulate 10 or 20 or 50 item drops.
To je taky ta věc, že se to bude rerollovat na lepší předměty. Neboli bude méně těch předmětů padat, ale budou poměrně lepší. Ty alternate věci, to bude úplně nesmyslný. Jo, a prý tam bude obr.
The ones in the video were simulated rolls basically, and they rolled with modifiers that you would try and craft. Chris said it's like the people who were experimenting. It wouldn't make sense for it to be a shitty item instead, basically.
Ten elemental implicit look, ježišmarja.
It's like the art that they had been crafting it. They had been attempting to craft it and had rolled it something at least halfway decent. So much higher chance, hopefully, of seeing something halfway usable or even potentially very good. What do we got here? Herald of Agony with quality 7% minions.
Jenomže je problém ten, že tady bude Herald of Agony, alternate quality. Jenomže když tohleto dostane do ruky kdokoliv, kdo neotevře Wikipedii, aby se kouknul, co je ten rozdíl, tak to tam nebude vidět. Myslím si, že tam to bude muset být nějakým způsobem zvýrazněný, co je ten rozdíl proti normálnímu. Myslím, že to je jediná možnost. Myslím, že to je nutný. Podobně možná by bylo asi dobrý, kdyby to bylo i na těch něco jako counterfeit uniques, nebo jak tak tomu říkali.
Okay. Wow. Alright. Holy shit. Okay, Cold Archmage, yeah. It looks like, I don't know if you can go full conversion, maybe the quality like converts it over, but maybe you can get like half cold, half lightning or something like that. There's definitely potential synergy though. Oh, that's kind of crazy. I wonder if it's probably converting the lightning, I would imagine, rather than just adding cold. I'd have to actually look at the actual Archmage. All right, we're gonna have Chris on in just 2 minutes, and I didn't take a bathroom break before then. So I will leave you with something on screen.
Takže za 2 minuty bude dál, jdem se koukat na tohleto. Takže Rogue's Marker. Creates portal to the Rogue's Harbor from town or hideout used as currency for services. Neboli to vypadá, že to je portál, scroll, kterým se zároveň i platí. Dobře, ty seš. Kontrakt, bunkr. Kontrakt, repository. Replikace z equity-čka. Žádnej zvuk. Já nevím, jak vypadají normálně. Armor, have perfect agony. Nevím, co je perfect agony. Increased crit strike chance. Předpokládám, že asi to perfect agony, to je to, já kouknu, jak vypadá. Ty, POE a Ciris Acuity. Ty vypadají Valpak, neboli perfect agony místo toho, jinak to vypadá stejně. Takže co je perfect agony? Podíváme se do hry, předpokládám, že tam bude jeden na stromě. Perfect agony. Perfect. Perfect. Perfect agony. Takže co to je? Modifiers to critical multiplier also apply to damage over time multiplier for ailments from critical strikes at 50% of their value. Jinak řečeno, tohle je dobrý na crit multistekování, když hrajete dot. Damage over time. Takže různý Bleedy to můžou to být nějaký burny, fire damage overtime, a může to být nějaký cold damage overtime, který asi není úplně běžný, to je nějaký vortex, tak všecko. Takže to je ten rozdíl. No, teďka něco říká, ještě se koukneme dál, dokud nezačne tohle. Heist target, box of 3 fixes. Requires perception 1. Ty requires brute force level 4. To je asi ta věc, pomocí který budete... To je to, co budete levelovat na těch jednotlivých panáčkách. Increased raising of alert level from opening chest guards, deal increased damage, take reduced damage, to by mělo být jedno, cannot be stun, nebo jenom ten alert je zajímavý, všechno ostatní se dá prorvat damagem, urn of fraud. To je teda ta věc asi, kterou máte najít v tom heistu a tu pomůžete prodat asi za té rogue markery. Nebo asi půjde, jo, 26 z 10 000, takže asi tohleto bude takový perandus coiny, se kterým se tam bude obchodovat. Incense of Keth. Naukith. Execute heist, nějaký obrázky. Alert. Další obrázky. Toto vypadá jak u Vilenty. Tak myslím, že je to pěkně nasvícený. Equip your crew, aha. Increased job experience, dobře. Tohle se zvydá asi tím experiencem, co? Asi jo. Sulfur blowtorch requires level 4 engineering. To bude asi na to pálení skrz dveře. Enforcer, a má to nějaký required level? Nemá. Increased melee, standard sharpening stone of mute. Some increased melee damage. Players and their minions regenerate percent per second. Requires in any heist skill. Takže tohle to asi dáte nějakému tomu pomocníkovi a on vás tím bude buffovat, i vaše miniony. Co je tohle? Nějaký cloak. The ring's cut. Reduced by 14%. Aha, neboli the ring, asi bude nějaká, jak se tomu říká? Ne, sekta. Sakra, zlodějská gilda, to je ono, to bude nějaká zlodějská gilda. Increase time before lockdown, dobrý reduced hiring fee. Aha, neboli tím nebudete muset platit a to je za ty portál scrolly, za tyhle za markery. Plan the grand heist. Předpokládám, že tohle bude velmi podobný jako Betrayal, to znamená, poskládáte si tady malé věci, velké věci a nakonec se to pokusíte udělat. Já bych řekl, že největší problém na celý lize bude ten časovač. Teďko vám to říkám, že tak bude. Co je tohle? Blueprint. Requires perception, blueprint, laboratory, secret rooms, ne. Blueprint. Fleet blueprint, ty seš co? Seš blueprint. Fleet blueprint, ghastly view blueprint. Lockpicking, team pending, requires level 62. Requires level 62. Nebude to... Takže když si uděláte tuhletu věc nějakou moc vysokou, tak ji nebudete moc zahrát? Hele, počkat, Chris byl jsem už tady.
Really fun to work on right from the beginning because it's so evocative. Like you say the word heist and immediately the development team knows what they're making. Like it was hard to get them to focus entirely on finishing Harvest when there's all this cool heist stuff going on in the background. You know, people are wanting to make vault doors and a cast of characters and that kind of stuff.
Slyšíte dobře, když tak mi řekněte, jestli je to
the more interesting one to us thematically, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I get you. It's like when you already have a new project and you're like, I don't want to work on old thing that I already know. It's like I have a much more exciting new thing to work on. So yeah, and it's definitely. I remember Beck saying that she didn't want to reveal the name or even tease the name too much because if people figured it out, it would be pretty clear as to what would be happening with the actual league.
Yeah, we had to be careful with that one because at least with Harvest, if someone works out the theme, they don't know what form gardening is going to take from that picks up. But with Heist, you know, obviously you're going to go on heists, assemble a team, work out some plans, steal some cool stuff. And so we had to be really careful with the teasing to just tease nothing and see what out of the nothing. And it's kind of hilarious today seeing the feedback stuff. But you said it was about boats, and it's like, well, I mean, We use the word friendship, which I guess says ship in there, but that's referring to the rogues that you get to befriend.
So I was looking at, after I found out what it was about a couple days ago, I was looking at a lot of Pix's teasers, and they were all very cryptic like that, but they were all actually true. Things like ships and stuff like that, and ocean, and I'm like, oh, Ocean's 11.
I suspect, I hadn't even thought of that. I suspect this is one of the things where once they randomly work out it's to do with boats, she makes sure to not roll that out in anything she says, while still not actually saying it is, if you see what I mean.
Tohle chvíli měla pěkně štvou, tam na mé příliš moderní.
Indeed, it's a lot of fun.
Sorry about the borks in the background. Doug's a little bit excited this morning. So you had another round of lockdowns recently, and we know that impacted your making of Harvest. How bad has that been this time around, or have you guys managed pretty well this time around?
We had pretty much 3 weeks at home, and it had the same productivity hit that we saw the first time, and that was kind of bad timing for it, but we should be okay. We have enough time to get stuff ready by release, hopefully, and it mostly meant that things were a bit tricky with getting the final stuff ready in time for the press tour, but thankfully everything...
Předtím měli zase lockdown, pracovali z domova, ale prej to stihnou v pohodě.
It looks like certainly a step up in like complexity and the amount of stuff that you would have had to have made. Like there's a lot of new characters here.
Ta grafika se mi fakt líbí.
Like UI systems and stuff like that. How like much more work was this compared to something like Harvest?
Oh, it's a lot of work. I mean, having all the different characters and the fancy different things you can do inside the heists is a ton of content that we had to make there. Something like Harvest is more about the rules of how fun the garden is to grow, whereas Heist can just be enjoying the different types of heists and cool things that occur in them and trying to work out what rewards you're stealing. And it feels pretty streamlined when you're playing because there's quite a lot of cool stuff that's kind of happening around you, if you know what I mean, in terms of guys like, you know, welding their way through doors and climbing through vents and that kind of stuff. And we've taken a lot of pains to make sure that stuff kind of feels like you're playing through a heist movie. Like you don't have to micromanage your rogues. You're basically just, you know, playing through and watching them get past the obstacles as you're dealing with killing all the masses of guards that come out.
Yeah, I like in the trailer, I like someone's coming in through the vents and stuff like that, and like tumbling through the tripwires. How much of that stuff is like actually in it? Like, is it actually in there, or is it just kind of like trailer stuff?
All of that stuff is stuff that you actually get to see in the game. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the only stuff that we handmade for the trailer was, you know, the character pointing at direct parts of the actual heist plan that's on the table. But you get to go to that meeting room, you get to have all of your rogues do all of the actions in there, you know, disarming lasers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Gotcha.
So speaking of like stealing things, you've got this loot contraband system where once you pick up an item, it's not technically yours yet until you actually make it out. Generally, people don't like to lose things once they have them. So tell me a little bit about the
časovač a přijdete o věci.
Concept of pseudo-hardcore looting that we'll see in Heist.
There's a number of factors there. In every league, we try to have something different that happens with combat. And the thing that's different with the combat itself here is the fact that you're working towards getting a reward that you have already selected. So halfway through, you get to say, I'm going to get this thing. And then if you complete it successfully, you will get that thing. And you get to tantalizingly hold it in your inventory in the meantime. Now, it's clearly marked as contraband, so you know this is an item you haven't locked in yet. And generally speaking, if you're careful, then you're able to get the item out. And this is mostly where the alert level management kind of stuff comes in, right? It's not about being stealthy getting in so much, right? You can kill guys, you can get items, right? There's very little actual stealth elements that practically matter there. Of course, if you want to roleplay, you can totally hide from guys. The important part about all of this is making sure you manage the risk level for getting stuff out. Now, there's subtlety to it. The number of rooms that you open with rewards in will be a lot more avenues for guards to pour out of when you escape. So if you actually it's very valuable. You want to be careful to not leave too much mess as you go in, because then there's less mess on the way out. And so you'll often find that if you get something incredibly valuable and you want to make sure you escape with it intact, you just have to be a lot more careful than usual escaping, as opposed to a lot more, you know, as opposed to playing into the stealth mechanics on the way in.
So it will be pretty possible to play a go loud play style for people who don't really want to stealth. Because I know some people were really excited for it, but there were a few people concerned in the chat about like the idea that they'll be forced to.
We definitely do not want to make a league that works against the concept of, you know, playing Path of Exile by killing monsters and fighting items. And so while the alert level does
Zajímalo by mě, jestli bude možný hrát celou tuhletu ligu z těch heistů, anebo jestli to bude, že budete mapovat. Zahrajete 50 map, potom zahrajete jeden heist, nebo samozřejmě, že když to budete kupovat, tak to můžete hrát furt, ale nevím jak moc toho bude.
You needn't worry too much about actual interactions with monsters in combat. I mean, sure, it marginally increases the alert level, but we definitely want to go in all guns blazing as a completely valid playstyle.
So a few people asked about minions, like will they like run off and aggro things and stuff like that, but you said the actual combat itself doesn't do too much to the alert level.
So they do aggro monsters as normal, right? Like if you're trying to hide from a patrol and you want to hide behind a statue, then having 50 minions run around is definitely a problem. Having said that, there are a couple of things here. For a start, like we fully use necro characters in our playtesting, right? It's completely normal for you to have minions in there as long as you're smart about it. And secondly, if you want to kind of roleplay a stealth character that does enjoy hiding from the guards and trying to get through with a minimal amount of disruption, which can be a lot of fun, then you probably aren't picking a necromancer in the first place for that particular role.
Yeah, right, got you. So this kind of like introduces like an alternate style of mapping that you can even access a little bit earlier in the game, and you once said that once you get players to maps, you effectively own their souls. So
yep.
Would you be able to break down at all why getting players to maps is like so successful at actually getting them to keep playing the game, retaining them?
There's something really rewarding about Path of Exile's mapping endgame to do with the kind of... There's a couple of things here. For a start, it's itemized, and that means that you get all the benefits of being able to craft maps and kind of control your experience there. And it comes with every map also putting something up, like there's a stake, as it were. You're wagering the value of the map against your ability to get the rewards out. In addition, because maps vary so much in terms of their layouts and what monsters you get and what random encounters you have, there's so many axes of randomness there that it really makes it feel like a unique experience every time. So a lot of people describe Path of Exile's campaign as the tutorial, where maps is the actual endgame. And so we've kind of embraced the fact that mapping is where the player retention really kicks in. Like once someone gets to maps, they're going to be playing a lot that league. There are a number of players who abandon at various different places throughout the campaign. You know, people will play, I guess with free-to-play games, you'll see like 50% of people bail out before you get to Brutus, for example. You know, there's a huge number of people who quit in the very first area when they realize Path of Exile is not League of Legends or something. And so as you get to maps, the kind of drop-off curve of people abandoning the game due to it not being what they wanted completely gets eliminated, and once people hit maps, there's a huge burst of retention as they play through a lot of the Atlas content.
So then do you think having like an earlier introduction to a mapping style system might potentially have an impact, or is that something you're like looking to experiment with here?
It's certainly an experiment. For a long time, people have been asking for some way of doing maps during the campaign. We didn't want to just throw endgame maps in, stick a map device in Act 1 or
během příběhu hodně lidí během příběhu přestane, jakmile se dostanou do map, tak pravděpodobně toho hodně odehrajou.
I mean, it's not maps, of course, but it is craftable areas that you can trade that represent an encounter, in this case involving heists. And so we get a lot of feedback about how players are going to handle this. Like, is this going to increase retention in the core game? Is it going to distract people? Are new players going to handle it well? There's a lot of questions there which should be answered, and that's important information leading up to Path of Exile 2 when we're trying to work out the role of maps in the global Path of Exile picture.
Does this also effectively act as a bit of a tutorialization for mapping, since you can introduce like crafting of maps and stuff like that earlier on?
Completely passively, yes. Like indirectly, you'll learn about how maps work, but we're not in any way saying to people, okay, this is early maps, here's what to do. We're basically saying these are heists, go steal some items, and if people happen to learn about maps in the process, that's great.
Awesome. Some of the leagues that we've seen in the past are like very heavily tied to the endgame mapping system. Like for example Delirium, while others are much more separate, like Delve is kind of separate endgame. Heist appears to be one of those that's a bit more separate overall. So what goes into the decision whether you make a league that way, more separate or more linked to the actual endgame mapping system that already exists?
A lot of it comes down to what we're trying to achieve with the content, right? With Heist, we need to have an elaborate structure that you infiltrate and then steal stuff out of, and burying that in the middle of an existing map has significant technical problems. By breaking it out into a thing that you find your contract/markers in the maps that you're playing, and then you go and do them, it both means we can have much more compelling and technically advanced encounters, and it also gives the player freedom to not have to do it right at that moment. Like, you all know the feeling of encountering Zana and then kind of feeling an obligation to run her mission because it was a free one that you'd otherwise not be able to do. We wouldn't want that in every single area with the Heist encounter. We have to spend some time breaking into a facility and stealing stuff. And so here you can just accumulate the contracts and do it whenever you feel like it. It's like the flexibility you experience with Delve.
Jestli to chápu, tak v těch oblastech budeme nacházet ty kontrakty. Já jsem si to trošku zamyslel, ale potom jsem to začal poslouchat, že budeme nacházet kontrakty a bude asi záležet na nás, od kdy je uděláme. Takže teoreticky můžeme dělat v aktu 1, teoreticky až v aktu 2 a tak. Nebo asi v mapách se budou nacházet kontrakty a teoreticky, když budou hodně juicnutý mapy, tak možná, že to i nějak budeme strašně sustainovat.
avoiding that a little bit more. Another kind of like part of this is that idea of tradability, and in some ways I like things, certain things not being tradable. For example, Harvest Crafts not being directly tradable, I think has like some interesting benefits. What in this league it seems everything is very tradable. What goes into the decision whether to make something tradable versus not being tradable?
Basically, if it's an item, it's tradable, and we like to itemize stuff because it means it's something that you can trade with other people, it's something that you can craft. Like, we could have had it that you accumulate heists in the same way you accumulate incursions, and that grand heists are just like a temple thing that's sitting on your account. But this was a great opportunity to say, well, what if that was all tradable from the start? What if you could have had a Temple of Atsuadal that you put together and then traded with another player, so there's a person who can fulfill the role of making good temples? And that's something we essentially get to do here. You can sit there setting up grand heists, revealing all the revealing and trading them to other people without ever running them yourself, if you would rather do that. And likewise, someone can trade for a grand heist, fill in the reveals on it, and trade with someone else for a profit, or just trade for grand heists and run them without ever actually doing the reveals themselves, depending on what they personally enjoy doing the most.
Will it be possible here, trading aside, will it be possible here to kind of like chain this content almost exclusively? Like, because you're able to get contracts from contracts, I understand, right?
Mark, can you find contracts in contracts?
And right now.
Yeah. Right, we're discussing that internally. It does matter for things like this, because while we do want the content to be chainable,
ještě není jasný, jestli během nějakého kontraktu můžete najít další kontrakt. To se ještě upraví do konce, než se
so that's being discussed, and as you'll see from previous content like Delve, we do want people to actually play the main game at least a little bit still. So I think some trade will be needed if you want to indefinitely play in Heist content.
Jasně, že to bude asi jako Delve, že to nebude možný jen tak hrát nekonečně. Ale řekl bych, že tím, že si to budete moct kupovat, tak to možná budete moct hrát nekonečně. Bude ležet na ceně.
You'll be able to like trade if you want to chain this sort of content more, but sometimes progression through higher tiers of Atlas unlocks like more content and stuff like that, especially when these league mechanics are
Když ten koberec, viděli jste to své dobrý textury? Viděli jste ty židle?
Like kind of direct correlation between Atlas progression versus your highest progression, or is it completely separate?
There's no direct relationship that I'm aware of there. Basically, as you play through maps, you're going to find more and more markers and so on, of course, on the high level maps, and so a little bit like Delve, you want to be playing the best maps you can, but in this case you can essentially find sulfite in the mine, as it were, because as you complete the heists you'll get more and more markers to fund more
Harvest jako takovej není zábavný, tam nejednou ty krafty.
Jinak
Harvest je o ničem.
But having said that, the Atlas is a rewarding mechanic that gives access to a lot of other items that you're not necessarily going to be able to steal in the heist, so I suspect players are probably going to want to push both.
Že prej Heist nebude schopný nějaký věci dávat, který můžete najít v Atlase. To bych se teda divil. Já si představuji, že to bude podobný jako všechny ty... všechny lížny a tak dále, lížny blighty, a simulakra, kde můžete dostávat všecko. Myslím, že to tak bude.
Don't worry, we will list it all on spreadsheets for you. I'm sure if last league is anything to go by, there'll be plenty of spreadsheets.
We just don't want to have the situation where people are hating bunker contracts before they've even run the first one because someone on Reddit theory crafted that it's got a slightly worse reward outcome than the other one or whatever, even though it ended up being wrong.
Yeah, it's a nice it's at least nice to have that little initial period of discovery at the league side, isn't it? Right, yeah, no, that's good. You answered all my questions there in regards to that. A lot of people have been asking about group play, and I mentioned in from my previous discussions that this seems a bit more group play friendly. Would you be able to go into that at all? Because I know it's been a bit of a mixed bag. Not great for playing co-op with Amy.
So philosophically, we designed the league, and then some of them better for group play than others. And if we made it so that every league was perfect for group play, we would have a lot less cool stuff that we could do. So it's going to vary from Path of Exile release to Path of Exile release. Having said that, in Heist, there's a lot of stuff you can do, right? So everyone's accumulating their intelligence for unlocking stuff when they do heists. And this means that if you have a blueprint you want to work on with your group, and you want to unlock all of the stuff, then you can share that intelligence by, like, I'll unlock this wing, I'm out of intelligence now, pass it to my friend. He unlocks some escape routes, passes it around until everything's unlocked. Then you can play it together. And it also, there's various benefits of being in the area at the same time. For example, if I die and drop a pile of contraband, if I was alone, that's lost. Whereas if you're there, you can.
Takže tam nebude 6 portálů na to? To bude jeden pokus?
The way that the rogues work in combat, to emphasize here, this is not an escort quest. The rogues are not something you protect with your absolute life or you fail the mission. The rogues kind of autonomously do their own thing, and that means that they can't die. And so, what does happen though is if a rogue is hit while he's opening a door or assembling,
takže to v zásadě fakt je hardcore.
Then it does reset the progress. You know, a little bit like opening a chest in an MMO, where you kind of want to not be interfered with while you're doing it. I mean, personally, when I'm picking locks in real life, if someone hits me in the face with a fire,
když umřete, tak se
ztratil. When you have a group playing with you, it's more people to help distract the guards away from the rogues so they can focus on their job.
Budeš tam obchodovat za ty marky?
Do you want a story? Okay.
Yes, I love a story.
Like, I had my magic cards locked away, and I managed to misplace the key, and so I relied on my wife to pick the lock, and that happened multiple times. To the point where I frustratingly yell her name, she'd come down with the lock picks and sort that out.
She
and
knew.
That was embarrassing, but she did it so quickly and looked so patronizing about it, and I just couldn't pick the lock.
Wow, that's a talent I didn't know she had. That's awesome. You might need to save a backup key somewhere, Chris. Lockpicking's fun though. I've done a little bit of practice lockpicking. Nice. I also love how you mentioned when you play in a party in this, your friends can effectively either help you or take your loot. And it got me thinking, like, in heist movies, a big part of it is often some sort of betrayal, some sort of like twist in the plot. So I like that group play potentially introduces that twist or betrayal.
That's probably part of Exile, denying items from other people that they deserve.
You're finally bringing back a little bit of that kind of like really aggro early days Path of Exile concept, like free-for-all looting and things like that in a way.
We're still PK people at the bandit encounters, I think. You know, like we've got a bit of that.
Yep, I did a little bit of that recently with Amy when we were co-op leveling. I was wondering, well, you probably, I don't even know if I want to ask, but is there going to be any twists in the tales in the story here for Heist?
You're going to have to play it and see, and the best part about saying that with a straight face is I have not read the Heist story. I'm purposely reading that content, and that means I do not know myself whether there are any twists in the story. And I'm not meaning to stick around for there being any, because they might not have made any, but that's the thing, we'll find out on release day, right?
And the twist could be that there's no twist. Even knowing there's a twist.
Co tam psali nějaký obrovy?
Characters.
Že by ten brute forceák, že by byl obr?
Yeah, 13 characters and
já bych doufal, že tam bude nějaký megaboss zase. Předpokládám, že tam bude nějaký megaboss, že jo? Zase nějaký master zloděj, něco takového.
That's a lot of people. Is there like a lot of overlap between what they do, or are they all have something unique going on?
There's a little bit of overlap with the skills, and part of this is that for any skill there's going to be someone who's really good at it. But then there are going to be people who are okay at it to start with, who you can train up, who have other benefits of what they do. Like everyone's got a personality, and they cause there to be different side effects as well.
Říkali, že tam bude 13
stealthiness and so on, and so you're going to want to pick your rogues based on your overall goal and what equipment you're giving them, your playstyle. And this may mean that if there's a lockpicking mission, maybe the best thing to do is not just bring the good lockpick, but to bring a bad lockpick and get them good at it, so that they can then go on the more complicated ones later.
How important is it to like level up these friendos?
You'll find contracts that have higher and higher level requirements for the stuff, so if you've been completely neglecting leveling up the right people and being really dumb about it, then you'll have some contracts you won't be able to run until you've gone and fixed the problem. But it's not a significant issue. I mean, typically you will gradually see the levels increase and think, I need to keep on top of this, but it's not that difficult. I mean, it's far less dangerous than the resistances in Delve, for example, where if you ignore that for a while, you just get pasted.
Yeah, indeed. I also saw that you can gear them as well. How important is the gearing, or is it kind of like more minor stuff, little benefits?
It's not. I mean, it's not critical to micromanage the gear of your rogues, but you certainly want to put items on when you can do. They will have various benefits that will help you in different ways, right? Like there's more damage, there's better stealth level management, there's more experience gain for their skills, there's economic benefits with the amount of markers that the gang is taking, and so on. And so you will benefit regardless of what equipment is on there. It's just that if you have a specific goal, like being quiet or leveling up stuff, you're probably going to want to tailor the equipment.
Takže budeme mít plný kód výbavy pro rogy.
I mean, very obviously, I'd be remiss in saying this is quite reminiscent of hirelings or mercs in, you know, for example, in Diablo 2, which is something some people are very excited about the concept of. Is this a little bit of an experiment in future potential of the idea of hirelings in PoE?
Yeah, we've wanted to do hirelings for a long time. The concern just is if we add them to the game as a thing which you can take around with you, then we've got double the number of characters in every area. You know, if you're playing a party and everyone's got a skills and so on, it's going to make gameplay complicated, it's going to be a lot on the screen, it's going to affect balance, it's going to affect everything. And also maybe the game's not fun to have a hireling with you the entire time. And so Heist is a great opportunity for, in an appropriate context, to have characters with you which are implicitly limited in what they can do, but at the same time performing actions that are useful, experimenting with equipment, experimenting with different skills they have, and basically seeing how it goes. And if it's amazing and everyone loves it, then we can look at widening it up in the future. So think of it as like test part 1 for how mercenaries work in Path of Exile. And the nice thing about it is it fits perfectly with the theme of heists. So afterwards, if we say, well, that was heist only for various reasons, it will make sense that you only have rogues in the heist encounters themselves. They're not something that players are going to expect to have throughout the entire game, because your, you know, demolition requirements are more limited when you're doing other content.
Yeah, I like the idea that they had specific niche roles that aren't necessarily core gameplay stuff, so they don't kind of get in the way of the core gameplay, which is, you know, combat, but rather ways of unlocking extra rooms or getting extra chests or finding.
To bude určitě jeden z velkých, jo, takhle já už to chápu. To bude jakoby Argus, že to bude takový hlídací pes, přes který budete muset porazit a potom asi přes něj se dostanete někam dál.
Yeah, we'll find out based on the feedback and see where things go in the future.
Yeah, maybe people will hate having to babysit a friend. But they look pretty hands-free in this from the footage. Like, you don't have to micro them too much. You just click a button to tell them to lock the door.
It's not a micromanagement league, right? Like the usual experience is you get a contract, you run the contract, the rogue follows you, you go through and steal some stuff and get out. Like there's little stuff to click on, apart from the monsters to kill them. Grand heists, of course, require a bit more planning, but you're not doing those particularly often, and so you will have to make some choices there about what you're going to be, you know, focusing your reveals on.
Takže to kontrakt, heist a grand heist.
We like to make it so that the micromanagement is kind of there for people who want to. I use the word roleplay,
but
contract really get into it. Like with Heist, with Harvest, you can make your garden significantly more complicated or more pretty or whatever, but you know, a lot of it just get down to building a garden where things are connected, and we certainly don't have a crazy set of rules to the extent that League did. I mean, this one is a lot more at face value. Like, we want it to be immersive, and micromanagement breaks immersion, so there's certainly a lot less micromanagement than people are fearing.
Wonderful. You're particularly passionate about items from every time I've spoken to you in the past.
Tornado shot, which
is fundamental in action RPGs.
In
this expansion, you're taking 100 of the uniques, the sacrosanct, unchangeable unique items, and making dodgy knockoffs of them.
Well,
seems kind of crazy.
You know.
Well, tell me a little bit about how that idea came about and what you think it means.
So, there are a couple of benefits to this. The first one is that these uniques are immediately recognizable to the community, right? Like, it's something our designers like to take something which has nostalgic value and to kind of do a twist on it, like how Fated uniques had the upgraded version. The replica uniques here are kind of an alternate view. It's kind of almost like the Planar Chaos Magic the Gathering set from a while ago. It's like, you know, how would this work if it was reinterpreted in a slightly different way? What other types of builds could be opened up with one small tweak? And so it plays on the nostalgia of the original items, and it also defies expectations in some ways, because you have unique items that were once very powerful, which due to the replication process have had their important thing changed. They're a lot more niche or just less powerful. And you've got ones that were previously ignored that now do some pretty powerful stuff. And so it'll be very interesting seeing how players kind of rate these up against each other, because you get them from Grand Heist reward rooms. You have to pick one out of a set that you're given. And so your immediate reaction of, I'm just going to take this one, picking something expensive, might not be the right one if, you know, the replication process hasn't been kind to that item. And so it should be interesting to see how people select those.
Takže možná bude víc variant těch replikovaných uniků.
5 to 10 normal ones, if you see what I mean, because in this case it's just a careful shift in one direction. There's a lot of testing versus normal uniques that have art requirements and a lot of implementation. So it means that we're adding a ton of build diversity in a space where normally we'd only be enabling 5 or 10 new builds.
There's a lot of other itemization stuff going on here as well, including something that you talked about in the past, which is this new like RNG system being tested for 2.0. How much is that being used here, and kind of like how does the system looking like it's playing out? I assume you've done a bunch of testing on it.
So this isn't using the exact decluttering stuff that we've been working on to reduce general byte drops in Path of Exile and so on. It is using similar techniques though. So basically the goal here is that we're presenting to players good rare items that have enchantments, or good rare items that have other properties from the display cabinets in Grand Heists. So because it would be underwhelming for you to play through a heist and the items got a good enchantment but terrible other mods. Why did they put that in a secure facility? And so this is the approaches we're using here are similar to the ones from certain fossils
budeme mít enchantnutý zbraně a zbroje.
And so it's an experiment in saying what happens if we have this concept of good rares. And of course the decluttering project that we've talked about takes that to an extreme where basically your item quantity starts to turn into better items. And so instead of having, you know, at the end of the level there's like 300 rares on the ground and a sea of other items, instead you have fewer actual good rares for you to look at where they're better and better if you would have found more rares normally. And so there's a big discussion there, but the intention of that project basically is to reduce the amount of items that you have to sift through, so we kind of give you the good ones you would have kept. And this is definitely the same in spirit, even if the approaches are a little bit different.
I do really like the sound of that, potentially bringing back the excitement of looking at rares on the ground a little bit more in this case, in heist containers or display cases. Changing gears a little bit, talking about skills. I'm personally curious about the black hole skill. That's like something I would expect to never really see in Path of Exile.
No, ten black hole, ten zní strašně všemocně. Jako, co to má za nevýhodu?
Them up like that is like, oh, I feel that's dangerous, right? From a balance perspective.
Well, what the skills team have been trying to do here is make position really matter in combat. They want it so that you have to choose where to throw that void sphere down, where to put your flame walls down, and so on, so that you have, you know, pros and cons to the various locations. Now, of course, doing that in combat at a fast pace is going to be a skill players need to learn, but that's where, you know, skilled combat is always good for a game. And it has tangential benefits of really, you know, encouraging self-casting to some extent. While it doesn't take away the ability, you can trigger void spheres if you want to, but being able to place one in the location to do the most damage is, of course, a lot better use of resources. And so it's kind of trying to give advantages to people who still want to play the game the old-fashioned way by clicking on monsters, as opposed to programming a complicated computer of support gems.
Yeah, it's I'm pretty excited about that, like positioning-based gameplay. So we also saw like the firewall and things like that, where shooting projectiles through it means like and the enemies correctly. So there's a lot more going on there. In some ways, Path of Exile is really
ta ohnivá stěna a ta černá díra, že prej jsou kvůli tomu, aby lidi víc přemýšleli o rozmístění na bitevním poli.
Just because there are parts of Path of Exile that are very fast-paced for certain characters on certain builds doesn't mean we shouldn't try to make it better for other characters if we can do. And
absolutely, super agree with that. Yeah,
we're working towards a... I mean, I don't want to say we're slowing the pace of the game down, because that does require combat, but we're trying to provide other options that require more thought and patience that are powerful as well, so that people who don't want to play at a breakneck speed, you know, are able to appreciate the game and still be powerful.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, effectively, you can make some content where it's more relevant. Like, here's the harder, slower content. Like, that's why I really love boss fights in particular, because that's you go from like zooms and having fun with that to here's another different type of content where you slow it down and things get a lot more serious all of a sudden. That changing pace, I think, is something where you can give room for a lot of these different ideas and concepts to flourish potentially.
Yeah, completely agree.
It also seemed very PoE too, this idea of things like Black Hole and Wall of Fire and stuff like that as well. Like more skills that you can link up and have extra skill slots for and stuff like that.
Yeah, the skills team are fully aware of the, you know, impending Path of Exile 2 in the future and making sure that we create stuff that's fully compatible with the way that that game is played.
Awesome. There's a little bit of a question about... we'll skip over to some of the viewer questions now, because I've still got a couple, but I've already kept you for like half an hour and I haven't asked any viewer questions yet. So one of the top asked questions has been tab affinities, which for those of you not aware is this auto sorting tab feature that Chris has talked about a little bit in the past.
Auto sorting v tabu.
So you want to know where it's up to?
Yes, please.
So we have the server-side part of this implemented and currently not finished testing. So the client-side part hasn't been done, partly because there's a lot of work finishing client stuff for Heist. Now, that's looking promising. It's entirely possible that it will be ready in the coming weeks, but that really depends on us knowing that it's safe. And anything that involves large amounts of items, particularly stash tabs, we don't want to get wrong. Like, we have to make sure it's done well, because if we accidentally deploy it and that, you know,
teoreticky možný, že už to bude na ligu připravený.
And so we're being careful with it, and
ale říkají,
sure
že to potřebují fakt hodně
team members on this project who know how to do it the best, and that does mean that things are going a bit slowly with it. So I don't know that it will be ready for 3.12 release day, but it's certainly on the horizon very soon, and there are people actively working on it. So, you know, it'll be released as soon as we're confident it's ready.
Tyhle ty quality of life věci se dodělávají první, druhý, třetí týden ligy. Že je pravděpodobný, že do 5,5 týdne od teďka to bude už.
Yeah, that would be pretty stressful, I can imagine. Needing to get that right, but it is a very exciting feature that's going to improve our lives a lot. I'm impressed to hear that it potentially is something that could be coming sooner rather than later. Then I expected it might still be illegal to away.
Soon, it's just that practically we're not going to rush it. We want to make sure it's done correctly. This comes with tab folders and various other QOL stuff that we've been talking about.
Tab folders?
I haven't pre-read these questions, so I'm just gonna read it off the cuff. How do you get contracts to begin with? Are they found in a box on the ground, or off of monsters, or something else? How do you get engaged with this content, I guess is the main question here.
So as you play through Path of Exile, you will find contracts and markers in regular world areas of regular monsters. Now, in the early part of the game, you'll also find specific, I can't remember the name, maybe it's Heist cache or something like that, where you find contracts and markers in one location. So like you were looking for your seed pod, in the early part of the game, you can find your Heist pod and get your Heist stuff that way. But over time, that becomes just a general drop from monsters.
Já předpokládám, že během příběhu to budete nacházet, že to budete vždycky někde garantovaný, zatímco v mapách to bude jako náhodný drop tyhle věci.
The new enchanted weapons and armors will only drop from heists or grand heists, and will they not be able to be crafted, or...
To vypadá, že heist a grand heist je něco jiného.
I know the answers for these ones, but go ahead.
Yeah, so the enchanted weapon and body armors drop from grand heists in the reward rooms there, and the items are fully craftable, right? You can take one of those and go on a crazy crafting project and make the best weapon the game has ever seen. And there are rumors of there being a currency item that allows you to transfer enchantments between items, or at least weapon and body armor enchantments. And that is something we are strongly considering, have not committed to yet, and will think about, because obviously it has very large crafting implications, but
že prej možná tam bude currency, která umí přesouvat enchanty. To by mohlo znamenat, že bude konečně moct předávat enchanty na helmy. Na helmy. To by bylo super. Říkali, že to ještě nepotvrzují, ale pokud by to udělali, tak potom už není důvod. To by fakt mohlo fungovat na helmy.
Yeah, I think the players should wait and see what there is in terms of that stuff when they play the league. There's no boss stuff that is absolutely mandatory for you to understand for your planning of the heist, so any nice stuff that you run into that you find on the day will be a cool surprise, and I would rather leave it like that.
Awesome stuff. Can you fated upgrade a replica? Wow, didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it's a different item. I mean, we could always add prophecies for those in the future, but currently it's a different unique.
Neboli není možný tyhle ty padělaný uniky upgradeovat pomocí profesí.
Well, let's see what the feedback is like on them. You know, there are a number of ways that we can do alternate uniques in the game, and you know, I can't promise Heist sticks around because we haven't, you know, had people play it yet and give us feedback. But you know, it's a league that's looking pretty promising, so it's entirely possible that some or all of it sticks around, and you can get replica uniques from Heists in the future in Standard.
Yeah, I imagine if there's like a concept that's explored in a replica unique, it could always be made into another unique or something else in the future as well, like a new skill or something like that. A lot of chat has been asking about things like quarry and harbour bridge farming. It's always like a hot topic. How much the league will involve it or promote it. I mean, it's something you just have to consider now.
I'm just going to get perfect answers. Do you have any comments about? Mark points out that because there's no place to run to in the quarry to get one of these, it just drops from monsters. You know, you can get them from maps, you can get them from the quarry. Whatever you want to do to kill monsters will get you these. You pretty much would have to full clear the quarry if you want to be, you know, getting maximum number of contracts from it.
Hooray.
Takže to vypadá, že v quarry už nebude ten kontrakt cache, ale že tam už to bude padat normálně z monster. Takže
who are we stealing from? I couldn't figure that out when I was writing the video. I was like trying to write who we're stealing from, and I'm just like, experimenters?
We have not given information about the storyline, and that's partly because we kind of want people to experience it, right? The writers have put so much text on this, there's so many characters, there's so many different things for them to discover, that we've just decided, like, you know, play the league, see what's happening as you play it. You know, there's a lot to explore there.
To by mě zajímalo, jestli se teď
I worry that I'm not doing it justice if I give a summary of the story when I'm, you know, presenting it on announcement day like this. So I would much rather that people experience it with its full voice-acted glory in-game.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of different characters and stuff here. There's a lot of voice acting. Was that difficult to arrange, like given lockdown and things like that?
A living nightmare.
Okay. Well, thank you for getting so much voice acting in. I always really enjoy the new characters and their voices and their goofy lines.
So much voice acting in, right? There's still 2.5 weeks to go and we just got out of lockdown, so there's a bit to go.
Asi tam to bude hodně dabovanýho.
Get it in say lines. I look forward to hearing some of it. Like I said, I've really enjoyed a lot of the characters in the past, Cassia and all that. So it looks like there's some pretty big characters here, and I don't just mean that in terms of what's his name, Treb or Teb, the big dude. This guy on the screen right now bashing through a wall. He's my favorite lockpicking expert, by the way. Some people are asking about Vulcan. How is its development going? Because it seems like there's been kind of like some people, it depends on the person, it seems, as to how well it's going, but some people had really good performance and then it's gone down.
Where
are we at with that, do you know?
There's a large technical patch coming out before Heist's release. I'm actually writing a news post about this for us to, you know, discuss it in the coming days. But basically, one of the things that the technical patch does is significant engine performance improvements. And so our goal is to release this before Heist so that people can try it out. I mean, it will work, it'll be fine, but we just want to validate that rather than have more problems on launch day. And so there's a bunch of other tech changes that are coming to Path of Exile at the same time. And we'd like to get that disassociated from launch day so that people can just make sure it works well.
Tornado shot, team, fees, travel fee, hiring fee, ring stack.
I think
nebo the ring fakt bude nějaká
tweaks to Vulcan. And as it stands at the moment, it's working better than ever in this, you know, in this new update. There are various weird driver / graphics card / hardware combinations that aren't great with Vulcan, and we're looking into whether we're going to be whitelisting or blacklisting drivers or automatically detecting and various other bits and pieces. But you know, it's going to get to the point where people that still have a bad Vulcan experience are cases that are outside of our control that we have to work with the graphics card vendors, or you know, make the players aware that a potential combo might work better with DirectX.
Fantastic stuff. I'm always excited to hear about that sort of improvements.
To je dobře, že na Vulkanu pracují.
And enjoying it even more.
Moc dobře.
A lot of people have been asking about a replica headhunter. You don't have to reveal that if you don't want.
Oh, sorry, kidding. About that one. Except keep an eye on Vex's teasers.
Yes, I'm with like 100 replicas and 900 gems, and then must be like 10, 15 different alternate bases and stuff like that. I imagine Vex is very, very excited about this expansion.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to show off to the community, which we're looking forward to. And it also means, which is cool, that there'll be lots of stuff which we haven't managed to show off by release that people will get to discover as they play through. So we'll have lots of single image posts to Reddit in the first few days.
Awesome. So keep your eyes peeled, folks. Plenty of cool stuff to see. Is there anything that has been your personal favorite kind of thing that you've seen that a dev has shown you for this that you really looking forward to?
Prismatic ring.
I enjoy the going on a heist aspect of this league, and there's various stuff that happens. Like there'll be people who are planning a heist, and they'll look at the blueprints and work out where the escape routes are, and then completely forget that when actually playing. You know, like there's quite a lot of like the onus is on you to actually understand the heist that you're doing. And if that means looking at the map beforehand and thinking, I have to go out through the auditorium and blah, 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 there's kind of a core realism to that.
To jako nebude nějaká mapa, když tam bude v tom? To není možný.
If you really want to finesse the, you know, actually taking the escape routes and stuff like that you've planned, then it requires actually like studying your plan beforehand. And I enjoy that because it's kind of how I imagine heists going down.
Tak to pro mě bude úplně nejhorší, mám tak špatnou krátkodobou paměť. Jsem nejhorší hráč Pexasa, co existuje.
Matches what it would be like in real life to do this kind of stuff, which is highly illegal, of course. So it's good we can do it.
I like how this is actually probably the least criminal thing we've ever done in our Path of Exile career, from murdering gods to countless other individuals and various other crimes. Just stealing some stuff doesn't really seem that bad in comparison.
Yeah.
Well, Chris,
very good. So.
Thank you very much for staying more time than originally budgeted for to answer some extra questions.
Questions. And fun watching.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Nemá úplně dobrý zvuk.
Have a good rest of your day. Enjoy everyone's reactions. And we're going to go take a look at some more of the stuff. So thank you very much.
Great. See you later.
See you later, Chris.
Bye.
All right, folks.
See you, Wilson.
Thank you very much to Chris and Bex and everything for arranging the little spoilers and stuff like that. Let me go ahead and get rid of this thing. Where is it? Display capture. All right. Okay, I fumbled with... Apologies for fumbling with the video thing and having my audio play over the background. Like this. Replicate while Chris was talking. Sorry, we missed like one of Chris's sentences because of that. I realized that I had the trailer video going, and the trailer video is only like a minute long, so it's like over and over again.
Už to ukončí, pokud to ukončí, jak se ještě koukne na tu stránku.
Also, the dogs have been going crazy this morning. I'm like, I did everything this morning to make sure they were settled, but they have not been settled.
Tohle je šílený implicit.
This time, it's like this exact moment I start the Q&A with Chris. Now it's playtime. We're so excited. They're just excited for the new expansion as well. But I hope you liked the Q&A. We have some things. You want to see a new thing?
Tohle to musí mít tu změněnou věc vyznačenou.
I have a new thing to show. Bex gave me some secret reveals to show.
Ještě nějaký věci budou.
What is this? Oh god, my Windows picture thing has crashed. It's nothing. It's nothing. Try again. The Windows picture viewer thing always crashes for me for some reason. Good job, Windows 10. Thank you very much. There we go. We have
nová sekirka.
What is this?
No sockets.
I haven't even looked at these
increase
yet,
fist damage. You have no intelligence.
I just read the line. I just read this line. Hold on, let me.
Critical strikes is 28% for hits.
I just read this line. You have no intelligence.
Critical strike chance is 28% for hits.
Butcher acts. Better to act without thought than to think.
Neboli nemusíte crit chance stackovat. Prostě vždycky máte 28. Nemůžete mít víc. Nemůžete mít míň. To je divný. Jednoruční sekera.
Critical strike chance is 28%.
Level 63.
Hits with this weapon. Wait, so your just actual crit is 28%? Okay. All right. You have no intelligence, requires one intelligence.
To není moc fizu, ne?
So you can't use like
to nevypadá vůbec dobře. Jednoruční sekera. Level 63. To vůbec nechápu. To je strašně špatný, ne?
The base crit for the item is 5, but this is like a crit override. It just means your end result crit
vůbec nechápu.
Hits with the weapon will be 28%.
You have no intelligence.
This item is super goofy. I love it. I love the you have no intelligence. Holy shit.
To je fakt divný,
I think that's like an end result crit replacer, like an actual end thing.
You have no intelligence. To nebudete moc používat půlku ani support, že?
No idea how to judge how good that would be. It seems like very unusual. Could be a goofy early end game item at the very least.
Level 63? Já bych taky si řekl, že early game proč ne? Level 63? Perfect Agony.
At Zeri's Acuity, Vile Gauntlets. You have Perfect Agony if you've dealt critical strikes recently. So a more twisted, more crangled version of
na to už jsme se koukali, co to je?
Like a little bit of a similar theme,
ten crit multi na
ultimately fairly different, being Perfect Agony related rather than Leap, right? So but yeah, that's kind of like one of the more different ones I've seen, I guess, so far. there's a little bit of a look at some replica acuities, which are a higher end item drop, so interesting to see a replica of them. Pet the doggo, I'm trying.
To je ono, to je zase jednou boss drop, který můžete získat alternativním způsobem. Je pravda, že to není přímo ten boss drop, ale je to jako na hraně.
My picture viewer crashed again. There was one other thing as well, which was the alternate quality flame blast with poison chance. If it doesn't load, I'll but if you want to grab a screenshot or something, here you go.
Flame blast, poison chance.
Pick Windows 10. What? Come on. Come on. Strangled Headhunter is a thing. I hope they do a replica Headhunter, and I hope
rozhodně
it's
replika Headhunter, rozhodně.
Really balanced, and by that I mean awful compared to regular Headhunter. Or it's like a complete subversion of the Headhunter idea. I would love to see a replica Headhunter dropping, and it's like people get their replica Headhunter, and it's nothing like regular Headhunter. I can't even imagine what, but it would be super entertaining.
Tohle to už
chance
to
to poison on hit, alternate quality flame blast.
Poison on hit flame blast. Takže to končíme. Koukneme se ještě naposledy na tu stránku. Tohle to nic nevidíme, a to jsme se koukali. Jsou obrázky. Tohle je jen tak nějaký pokoj. Co je tohle? Blueprint. Nevím, co je tohle. Tady máme nějaký blueprint, neboli ten asi můžeme prdno vzít. A prdnout ho sem. Execution point. Ne, extraction point. Escape route. Curio display. Také ten brute force. Lockpicking. To malička, ty to není pořádně vidět. Že tam asi půjde o to, že tam, že tyhle ty výstavky chcete vidět. Dále. Ty. Ano, to je zajímavé, to vypadá, že jsme v nějaký jeskyni. A tady je luk, nebo palcát, nebo toulec. Nebo takhle to tam půjde vidět, to se mi líbí. Co je tohleto za nějakou nějakýho vesmírného žabáka, prasožabáka. Alert level, nic. Tak a tady máme blueprint. A to se podle mě bude dávat takhle nějak tam. Thief trinkets. Which go in their own equipment slots. Jo, takhle. Já jsem myslel, že to budou equipmenty na nás. Takže to je na ně. Tohle je pěkný, to je pěkný tohle. Alternate quality gems. To je fakt těch 900 nových gemů. Tam to musí být na tom gemu ukázaný. Řekl bych, že už v současnosti kvalita na gemu není jasná. Obzvlášť, když máte gem s kvalitou 0, tak nevíte, co mu to změní, když se nekouknete na wiki. To je problém. Myslím si, že tam to má být nějak jinak. Replica uniques and experimented bases. Base types. Takže, hele, replika Sorrow of the Divine. Tak se asi koukneme, jak vypadá normálně. Sorrow of the Divine. Unique. Flaška. Evo. Standard. Se standardu. Dále, co line ice pos, jasně. Takže ukaž mi to, flaška. What? To nemám? To jsem v SSF? SSF, tak dobře, tak do standardu normálního. Stash. Je vtipný, jak tady mám ještě normální Oria. Tady jsou uniky, tady jsou flašky, tak. Tady to. Takže co to je? Duration, Zealot's Oath, předpokládám, že to bude něco jiného než Zealot's Oath. A life recovery applies to energy shield. Ty, ano, Eldritch battery. Dává Eldritch battery during flask effect. What? Ty, line ice pause. Line ice pause dělá trigger 5 rain of arrows when you attack with a bow. What? Trigger level 5 rain of arrows. Funguje to tak, že když do těch bot dáte support gemy, že vám to supportuje ten rain of arrows? Nebo můžete mít 5 linknutý rain of arrows, který normálně... Počkej, musím vyzkoušet. Já jsem si na ty boty v životě nepřečet. Jak to funguje tohle? Jo. Takže Tornado Shot plus Rain of Arrows. A tohle je ono. Rain of Arrows triggernutý. Can't be used. A teďka to average damage 5, 9, 3, 2. A když tam dáme nějaký support gem, třeba edit call. Ha, funguje to? Ha! To jsem v životě neviděl tohleto. Takže můžete mít 6 link plus 5 link k tomu. Ha! Zajímavý. No a tohle to dělá co teda? Toxic Rain místo Rain of Arrows. A jinak asi stejný. Chaos damage to attacks, ty děláš fire damage to attacks. Ano. Reduce movement speed on life, to je stejný. Zajímavý. Tak, Abyssus. Abyssus ten dává něco jako, že increaseuje melee damage nebo physical damage nebo něco takového, ale zároveň dostáváte víc damage, ne? Abyssus. Abyssus dává all attributes, fizz, melee crit multi. Increased physical damage taken. Takže předpokládám, že experimentutý Abyssus bude dávat něco jiného než physical damage. Ano. Fire damage, cold damage, lightning damage, melee crit multi, increased, ano. Nebo toto je elementální Abyssus. Šíleně vysoké hodnoty, ne? Ty dáváš 50 průměrně, to dá strašně moc. A tohle je ten experimentutý base, který má implicitiny, což je naprosto geniální. Představte si, že byste měli ticket bow, který by, je mi jasný, že to nebude ticket bow, že bude existovat se jeden look nebo něco takového. A co tady vidíme? Crit chance 550. Asi nezjistíme, kolik má nějaký normální look, co? Schválně nějaký obyčejný look, tohle je asi nejobyčejnější. Ty máš crit chance 5, attacks per second 1,54, ale to je celkem rychlý. A ty jdeš attacks per second 1,45. A má to tam ten je 140 flat fireů jako implicit. Úžasný, úžasný. Se schválně kouknu, kdybych já si přidal 140 flat fireů tady do mýho buildu, jak se to jmenuje, můj look, Mind Guide. Ads. Už to se nefunguje. Schválně, asi tam přidám add 140 fire damage. 140 tu 140, doufám, že to bude fungovat. Fire damage. Funguje to? Funguje to. 5% DPSu navíc. Já říkám, jako to je fakt hodně. To je super. Trošku méně fizzu, ale pro mě je ten fizz úplně na nic. Já ho nijak neškálu. Lidi nehráli ligu, protože byla moc složitá, tak udělej ještě 5krát složitější, aspoň že to bude prodat. Weapons and body armor enchantments, to je ono. All sockets linked, neboli to podle mě znamená, že na to budete používat pouze Jeweler's orby. A když tam trefíte 6 socketů, tak z toho rovnou budete mít sexlink. To bude úplně geniální enchant na začátek ligy. A jinak life modifiers have increased effect. To znamená, že maximum life bude zvětšený. A nevím, jestli to rovnou tu hodnotu bude měnit. Jestli to funguje jako na jewelry, že tady je nějaká, počkat, to je ještě stará postava. Že že tady mám increase elemental damage a už tady tyhle ty hodnoty, které teďko vidíme, jsou zvětšený. A reální hodnoty vidíme jenom s altem. Nebo nevím, jestli třeba už tady to takhle je. A nebo jestli life modifiers have increased effect. Asi to bude takhle, asi to bude vypadat podobně, jako je to tady. A ty seš co? Attribute requirement, což je nevýhoda. A zároveň physical jsou o 15% větší, což je mega, že jo? To je podle mě totálně mega. Jako to je 15% more DPSu z physical věcí. To je úplně strašně všemocný. Jediné, co budete muset udělat, je, že budete muset mít strašně moc strengthu. Oppressive curses. A to je ono, to jsou takový ty exploze. Tak to si přešlu, protože to se mi nějak nezdálo. New curse rated skill, new curse support. New doom mechanical. Self-cast curse to increase in intensity over time. Doom mechanic. Until it expires. This works well with conjunction. Impending doom support. Because an explosion of chaos damage when a linked curse ends. Curses also have received new. Jo, neboli which causes an explosion of chaos damage. To neznamená, že exploduje ten monster. V tom videu to předtím bylo, řekl bych, ukázaný a řečený tak, že když je dokončená krsa, dokončený trvání krsy, tak exploduje ten monster. Zatímco to je jenom nějaký chaos exploze, což nemusí být velký, že? Když to bouchne za 300 damage, no tak to je úplně nic. Also new look, tak ukáž, jak vypadáte. Takovýhle kolečka nějaký, toto vypadá dost podobně. Just to curses, do mechanic. Auto mechanic. Nevím, zase je to podobný. Hex was active. Punishment. To vůbec nerozumím. Sharpened steel. To se mě vůbec netýká. Powerful spells. Tyhle ty věci, to bude zajímavý. Co je tohle? Blazing salvo. Haha, to je karta z Magiců. This spell releases a volley of fiery mortars. Overlapping impacts, firing from further away, cause mortars to cover ranged area. To je kouzlo. To je černá díra. Jako hrozně moc lidí bude chtít hrát černou díru. Už jenom kvůli tomu, jak vypadá, co to je. Physical and chaos damage, pulling all non-unique enemies to the sphere, slows enemies, increasing intensity closer. Several corpses into the void. To je hodně zajímavý, jako tam nevidím nevýhodu v tomhle tom. Kromě toho, že se to musí dát na správné místo. Create a wall of fire, burning damage, blah blah blah, deal edit. When you or your allies fire projectiles through the wall, they'll deal added fire damage and apply some of the wall's burning effect to enemies. To je dobrý. To je v Plants vs Zombies, tak tam to funguje úplně stejně. Much more. Takže sekáček, který vůbec nechápu. Já tam na tom nechápu, že to je requires level 63 nebo 62 nebo kolik to bylo. To vůbec nedává smysl. Path of Exile Heist or 25 new uniques, 12 divination cards, visual element to some skills. Takže Corpse Walker. Trigger level 20 Corpse Walk when equipped, to nevím co je. Increased evasion, movement speed, increased damage if you've consumed corpse recently. For each nearby corpse regenerate life per second. To vůbec nerozumím, netuším co je Corpse Walk. Vlastně něco nekromanského. Chains of Emancipation. Takže je to Chain Belt. Takže malý Energy Shield. Dává to Flat Life, Chaos Resist. Enemy hits inflict temporal chains on you. Takže je to Self-Curse Temp Chain. When you lose Temp Chain, you gain maximum rage. Immune to curses while you have at least 25 range. Neboli to je zajímavý pro lidi, kteří nějakým způsobem řeší rage. S ragem jsem nikdy nehrál, že netuším, jak je to dobrý. When you lose temp chains. Nevím. Immune to curses, while you have at least 25 rage. A triskaidekafobia. Kurník šopa. Co to je? Tohle to musíme vygooglit, co to je. Triskaidekafobia. Já jsem nechtěl.
Skills.
Triskaidekafobia. Triskaidekafobia. Jo, strach ze 13. Tak to je dobrá blbost. Ano, divination card je 3, teda, je to 13 v sadě. Je to map tier 13, kvalita 13%. 100% delirium. 8 modový. To je dobrý. Jako 100% deliriová mapa s 8 modifierama. To bude těžký. Tier 13 to není nic velkého. To je zajímavý, to je zajímavý. 100% delírová mapa. Pochopitelně to bude dobrý pro lidi, kteří jsou imunní na reflekt. Path of Exile Mac OS. Mac OS, takže lidi na Macu budou schopni hrát s hráči na PCčku. Heist Supporter Pack by now. Dobrý. Jako věci, kterých se já bojím, jsou časování toho utéct a že něco seberete a tím časem to můžete failnout. To je věc, kterou já na té hře nejvíc nemám rád. Já mám radši, když dejme tomu něco dělám neefektivně, tak mi to trvá 4x díl. Něco takového, nebo dostanu čtvrtinu nějakého rewardu. Ale nejhorší je hrát Siruse v počáteční fázi ligy, kdy ještě nejste tak dobrý, abyste ho s jistotou dali a prostě ho failnete. A v tu dobu ještě trvá strašně dlouho odehrát všechny ty mapy. A to je šílený, to je nejhorší. Neboli tenhle ten pocit zklamání se bojím, že tam bude. Tak no. Dobrý. Levelování postaviček, tohle to bude trošku složitý, nevím, jestli to bude oprus nebo ne. Tyhle ty heist mapy, to bude to, na čem se bude vydělávat, samozřejmě. Craftování nějakých těch alternativ baseů. Ty alternativ uniky, řekl bych, že tak žádná pecka. To se hned po nějaký chvilce bude vědět, tohle má cenu, tohle nemá cenu. Takže prostě jsou to jakoby jenom další uniky. Ale řekl bych, že ty alternativní basey by mohly být zajímavý. Pokud náhodou nebudou tak strašně běžní, že všichni budou mít alternativní base, tím pádem jenom pro pár buildů toho bude lepší base, o 5% větší DPS a to je všecko. Trinkety. Tyhle ty alternativní gemy musí mít označení. Tohle to je rozhodně zajímavý. Tohle to bude build enabling pro hromadu buildů. Tohle to je hrozně mocný. Dobrý, hejte se. Tak, já jsem spokojený. Reveal byl dobrý. Přemýšlím, jestli bych ještě se měl kouknout někam. Možná se ještě kouknem takhle. Back to main site. Heist, announcing heist, press to this complete. Tak, full heist announcement, watch the trailer, supporter packs. Tady je ještě press coverage. Tady už tak si můžete ještě něco kouknout na oficiálních Path of Exile stránkách. A tohle to jsme jako viděli. Tak, teďko všecko. Doufám, že se vám video líbilo. Když tak mi řekněte i ze záznamu, jestli úrovně hlasitosti byly v pořádku nebo ne. Vím, že když jsem někdy před 2 ligama dělal tohleto, tak lidi říkali, že to bylo, nevím, jestli moc nahlas nebo moc potichu. Tak teďko jsme to s chatem trošku ladili, tak snad to bylo lepší. Tak, to je všechno, díky za pozornost a zatím.